A very good evening to you and welcome to Game On. I am your host, Mahdeen Chenya. Well, we are discussing a very important topic, of course, on the show today. That is the state of rugby in the Eastern Cape. While everyone is slowing down in this festive season, getting ready to celebrate their Christmas and their New Year's, what is happening in the Eastern Cape? And we certainly have been wondering whether the players actually have money to put food on their tables. Now, we have been discussing this issue about the Eastern Province Rugby Union and the Southern Kings. And as SARU have closed now for the year, we asked the question, who is actually looking after the players in the Eastern Cape, as it isn't the provincial or the national structures? Well, before we get into that discussion, let's have a look at your top stories today. The big one, obviously, for us is Eastern Province Rugby in focus. Blatter is set to appear before the FIFA Ethics Committee this evening. Well, as I said, we are discussing the state of Eastern Province Rugby. We are taking calls on the show throughout the show. Just to remind you about that number, it is 01154222186. Before we get into the discussion, now the EP Kings continue to be in the news with reports of bad administration that has led to players not being paid. Now the players were led by Kevin Lattis and Ronnie Cook and expressed concerns in the petition over the arrangement that has seen SA Rugby take over the affairs of the franchise ahead of next year's Super Rugby season.
The EP Kings have been making the news for all the wrong reasons of late. Maladministration, poor player management and lack of proper transformation have been hovering as a dark cloud above the embattled union's head. The custodians of South African rugby, SARU, have been forced to step in and take over the administration of the Super Rugby franchise. Member of the Eastern Province Rugby Union, Dan Qeqe, feels there is no need for panic. He insists things are being run above board at the Port Elizabeth offices.
All the fixtures were played to a finish, and we had meetings, and no such issues were raised by clubs. Okay. And of course, like in any other union, there will be divergence of opinions on issues, and that cannot view that as chaotic or whatever.
The Eastern Cape has over the years been known as a hub of rugby talent in the country. The province has produced many Springbok greats, but it boggles the mind why a union so rich in talent fails to do well in our domestic rugby competitions. Qeqe feels the lack of serious financial muscle is the main reason why the union is easily bullied by its competitors.
My take is that this province has never been sponsored well in the past, even during the days of apartheid. And for that reason, Eastern Province continued to lose players. Look, I can mention many. We lost Danny Gerber to Western Province, Garth Wright, and Henny Leroux, and many others to the other provinces, because Eastern Province cannot be compared well with Blue Bulls, Western Province, or the Sharks.
For the time being, the Southern Kings team will be augmented by consultant coaches from the SARU Mobi unit, while the financial affairs will be handled by the SARU Chief Financial Officer, Basil Haddad. Match day eventing in the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium will be handled by stadium operators Access Management. Khotsoselo for ANN7 Sports Desk.
Well, before we discuss let's start again. Before we start the discussion, now we contacted SARU earlier this week, and they said that they cannot comment. We should in fact contact the EPRU. Now, former EPRU CEO Charles Kraus is now with the Southern Kings, so he said that he cannot comment, and EPRU employees were asked not to speak to the media. So what we have on the show today is certainly what's been happening on the ground at Eastern Cape Rugby indeed. Now let me introduce you to my guests in studio, and we really appreciate them being here. Of course, it's Tyson Malumba and Chris Ngubuli, if I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here in studio. Tyson, let's start with you. Tell us about your experiences as you started in the Eastern Cape playing rugby.
Well, when we started off in the Eastern Cape, it was fairly like they got a group of us together, and then the way we went forward about it, we trained hard, obviously, like every other team. And but along the way, as things started moving, you could sense a bit of disorganization, you know. But then after a while, things just started going downhill from there on. And that's where other players moved to other unions and stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically how it went, you know. So, but the thing that I can say the most, is, I think management is the most important thing in the whole thing. If you don't have a good management, and you can't go forward with anything.
Chris, tell us about your initial experiences. Can you believe that this is happening to players in a professional era?
Yeah, seemingly with the whole ups and downs and stuff. But the major thing is about the grassroots foundation with EP. Because the management has to start from down there, from the grassroots level. And then from now, they look at all the black players on top, which most of them don't even have a proper development area from the basic lineup of it. And the sad part of it, it's with the sponsors even. Mostly if there's 70% black players being in the province being produced, then the sponsors pull out. And it's, look at Border, they don't even have a sponsor on it.
Yeah.
And then once there's any province, once there's majority black players, sponsors pull.
But isn't that the most saddening thing? Because we're trying to evolve as a rugby playing nation, we're trying to transform. Tyson, for you, the whole point of the Southern Kings and putting money into the Southern Kings, getting them into Super Rugby, was to have a predominantly black team. In the Currie Cup, it was completely white.
Well, when we first got signed, there was a group of, there was a lot of non-white, you know, in the group. And then obviously we were told that, no, this is going to be the foundation of the Super Rugby. And that's how it went. But then after a while, when I guess when all the sponsors came in, when the money came in, and one by one, they just started cutting us loose and stuff like that. And other players went to other provinces, and yeah, that was a very saddening thing. But what can I say? I mean, we there to play hard, and if you don't get recognition for it, you got to go somewhere where you can get far, you know?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I'm going to come to you guys in just a little bit again. We're joined by Tony McKeever on the line. He is the former CEO of the Southern Spears. Tony, thank you for joining us on the show once again. Such a pleasure to have you in studio. I want you to paint the picture for us. We contacted SARU and they explained to us that the EPRU is now separate from the Southern Kings. How on earth does that make sense?
It doesn't make sense because the Southern Kings are representative of the entire Eastern Cape. It's not just EP Rugby, but they're using a travel agency to contract players, and they don't even have a wholly owned travel agency. Half the travel agency is owned by Tourvest, who know nothing about this.
As I said, sorry, I think I didn't get to hear what you said initially because our sound was down, but how on earth, obviously the Golden Lions are a rugby union, the Currie Cup team and the Super Rugby team play underneath the Golden Lions band. How is it that the Eastern Province Rugby Union is separate from the Southern Kings? You certainly can't have the one with the other. What happens to the Currie Cup players? What happens to the players in Border? Certainly they're not benefiting from this deal, which initially should be benefiting the whole of the province.
Well, Currie Cup isn't played at the same time that Super Rugby's played.
Yes.
And the idea is that each of the unions has a senior partner and junior partners. The senior partner in the Southern Kings is EP Rugby Union. The two junior partners are Border and SWD. So that's a spread from George all the way up to Bishu. And the idea is that those are the three pools or wells from which you draw talent. I heard everybody talking about black and white. People misunderstand that the Eastern Cape area gives rise to the most unbelievable black talent. And that black talent gets harvested by the other unions who are not grooming their own talent. And that's a tragedy in this instance.
Tony, why do you think SARU is standing behind Cheeky Watson and Charles Kraus? I mean, certainly they're seeing what's happening at the Eastern Province Rugby Union. Surely they need to say that black players from the Eastern Cape are not benefiting from the current management.
Machreen, they're not necessarily standing behind Cheeky Watson and Charles Kraus. They have an obligation to SANZAR. SANZAR requires one of their partners, and there are 5 of them now. There's Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Japan, and Argentina. But they require that those partners field the very best players in their area. So SARU has an obligation to SANZAR in terms of that agreement that they have, in terms of fielding the best players. So I don't think that they're necessarily standing behind Cheeky Watson or Charles Kraus. They have an obligation, a contractual obligation, to deliver a 6th Super Rugby team.
Well, that's understandable and acceptable indeed. But what happens to the union? Obviously, you know, you've told us in the past that, you know, they're very, very financially strapped. There's not a lot of things happening in terms of the Eastern Province Rugby Union. Once the Super Rugby starts, once it's finished, how can SARU help the union turn things over?
Well, the union's in chaos, and their administration is absolutely hopeless. And they launched a couple of days ago a new jersey that's some kind of pathetic quick fix, some cosmetic application. That alone looks like a quilt. It wasn't surveyed properly. If a title sponsor does come through, there's no space for it on the front of the jersey. So what SARU needs to do is, with the collaboration of all the presidents in the President's Council, is ensure that there's a competent management that can step forward.
Tony, do you ever think that you'd be able to go back to the Eastern Province Rugby Union and fix things?
I'm available, and you can't learn on the job in this kind of situation. There's no room to maneuver, there's no time to be wasted, and I think the individuals who are the president and the CEO have tried to learn on the job and have failed dismally. They haven't been able to raise so much as a 50 Rand voucher or hamburger voucher from Spur. They need expertise in terms of delivering sponsors.
Tony, I'm going to ask you to please hang on the line. We just want to go to our studio guests once again. Chris, do you have anything to comment on what Tony had to say?
No, he's been there. He knows what he's talking about. And he says it's chaos. Because if there's management is not right, players are going to be treated fairly, the whole thing is going to be chaotic. So it also starts what he's saying with the management stuff. So he's right there on the money with the whole system. But everyone has been talking, we need to act.
Yeah.
They need to act. Those are the people who know what's going on. Those are the people, like the question you asked, is he available to come help? And he said he's available, but those are the people who wants to help, but are they going to be called in? That's the bigger question.
Tyson, do the players have the power and the ability to call for a change in Eastern Province Rugby?
Well, I think they can, because apparently on the news the one time they went on strike. They didn't want to train because they were not paid their salary. So I think at a certain extent players do have that kind of power. But it's just, is SARU listening? Are they willing to act upon it? That's the bigger picture there. But the players can do something. They can only do so far or take it so far. The race has got to come up to SARU and the management to take it all the way. And as I said, Eastern Cape has got unbelievable talent in terms of non-white players, you know. I mean, how many Springboks are there that are non-white players from the Eastern Cape? So if we don't take care of the Eastern Cape franchise, I don't know where we can grasp all the talent from then.
How often do you go back to the Eastern Cape and get to see the talent there?
Well, I used to play there for like 4 years. I played there. So now and then I do go there and meet up with my friends that are still there. Some of them has moved on. Some of them are playing up here. Some of them are overseas. So yeah, I do meet up with a couple of them and we talk about the situation, you know, and yeah, what's going on down there at the Kings, you know, and yeah, it's very sad. Like a friend of mine that was playing at the EP King, Obi, he's just left now. He's at the Bulls now because of what was happening. They were not getting paid and what was going on. So that's a very hard topic to go through. I mean, the players is the bread and butter. I mean, they're working hard. So we have to have some kind of compensation. But if it's not happening, then I don't know what SARU's doing then.
Absolutely. Chris, for you, do you get to go home and see the youngsters that are coming through the ranks, those, you know, that have the ability to go even up to Springbok level? I just must add that on the show last week, we had a couple of the players who have now signed Super Rugby contracts saying that a lot of them and their colleagues didn't even have money to put food on their tables. A lot of them had to get sort of piece jobs or jobs on the side to make a little bit of money. And I'm sure that's the case for so many others in the province.
Yeah, funny enough, I was there last week. Yeah, for a few weeks, because I am from the Eastern Cape.
Yes.
I stay in Grahamstown, so I am from there. So, and it's so sad when you see the talent that's in the Eastern Cape. And in Grahamstown, suddenly they had a tens tournament where it's just grass, where you see players that you would see on an international level, that you see there's potential, but they're going nowhere. And the funny thing about the Eastern Cape, you get small boys playing, not even on fields, along the lines, just on the roads, and then they'll never be taught to pass left and right, but they do it, and they've never been taught these things. It's just, they breathe, they eat rugby from the Eastern Cape from a young age. So it's really saddening when a province that breeds most of the best players in South Africa that's struggling this much. Because you can see all the provinces, there is no province that doesn't have an Eastern player, Eastern Cape
Yes, that's right.
player. So it really needs a drastic help.
Just
something
to
to
add
add?
on to that, sorry about
Yes.
that. What soccer is here in Joburg, that's what rugby is in the Eastern Cape. Everybody is crazy about rugby there. Whenever, like a little kid, they're all crazy about rugby there. So, I don't know, something needs to happen, really.
Well, certainly that has been the common thing from everybody that has been speaking on the show, that there needs to be some sort of change in administration, change of thinking, because there's all this talent going to waste. I want to bring Tony back in here. Tony, where do we start in changing things? What is the first thing to do? Let's say if we do get a new administration, what is the first thing that needs to happen?
Well, certainly an intervention needs to happen from the President, Oregon Hoskins. He needs to step in and set up a task team of competent people that can put this into shape and that will earn the respect from the corporate business in the Eastern Cape, Mandela Bay, but throughout the Eastern Cape. There's the Eastern Cape Development Community, there's the Mandela Bay Development Agency, there are multiple businesses in there that are willing to participate, but they will not step forward with the kind of administration that is allowed to run rampant the way these people have. This is not a spaza shop. This is a professional enterprise with responsibility to the broadcasters, to SuperSport, and to the sponsors of all of SA Rugby.
Absolutely, indeed. Tony, there were a couple of documents that were leaked. I saw it on Twitter and all around networks from this new business that was obviously started to take over the Southern Kings. That in itself is dodgy dealings, don't you think?
It is. SAPA haven't stepped forward to help these players. They've tried to cherry pick them. I've seen SAPA do this before. In 2006, they abandoned the Southern Spears players, and they've done it again. So the documents that you see in circulation of some ramshackle, put-together company that isn't even legitimate, and it's not even registered with the company's registrar. And the shareholder in that is Tourvest, a travel agency. Now, I ask you, how does a travel agency contract professional rugby players? It's just outrageous what's going on. So a lot of sense and sensibility needs to come to the table, and Oregon Hoskins has stepped forward. He said he would like to fix it. He's undertaken to fix it, and he needs to put his task team together with the agreement of the Eastern Province Rugby Union clubs, as well as Border, as well as SWD.
Well, Tony, thank you very, very much once again for speaking to us. We really appreciate your support on the show. Chris, are you angry?
No, I'm not.
Well, you should be. I mean, certainly that's somewhere where you started. I mean,
No, oh, you mean about
Yes.
the whole... Yeah, it's really frustrating, actually, because we've been angry for years. And then now suddenly it's coming to board as if it needs help. And people can see, and players are suffering, and the talent is suffering. And the scariest part is that most of the players don't even go anywhere after that, because there's nowhere to go. If your province is not looking after you, some of us or some of them, most of them, they don't get picked up by other provinces, and then you have to be stuck in the Eastern Cape.
Absolutely. Just want to remind you that we are taking calls here on the show. The number is 011 542 2186. Just to repeat that, that's 011 542 2186. You can join in the discussion. If you have any experiences, just do give us a call and join in. There's a lot of players. Borders are obviously probably the bigger of the franchises in the Eastern Cape. We know that it's certainly the hotbed of black talent. There's no sponsors, there's no money in Border. Border was supposed to be benefiting from the Southern Kings deal. They are not. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, when I used to be at EP Kings, well, the way it was structured, we were told that whatever money comes into the EP Kings as a whole, it will filter down to Border and SWD. But then, and it never went there. To be honest with you, it never went there, because I left Border to go to EP.
That's
and
right.
some of my friends that stayed behind, they were like, there's nothing coming in here, you know. When everything went to Eastern Cape, and everything was, Eastern Cape was, EP Kings was the center of everything. So I don't know what's happening there, where the money is going, where the transformation is coming from. I really don't know what's happening there.
You know, there's always been things, especially when it was the Rugby World Cup, saying that where are the black players to represent South Africa at a national level? Well, here's your answer. So all of you sitting here, those in the Eastern Cape, but it's because of SARU and the maladministration that we're not seeing them come through to the bigger ranks. Do you find that this is how we are failing our people?
I think mostly players get so discarded over the whole thing, because you play rugby, you get to a professional level, and then you see these guys are not getting paid on top of you. So where are you going? It discards the players. It's killing the talent from underneath, because they look up to play for EP. You play schools to play to one day to play for your province, and when you see your province is chaotic, where do you go if you don't get signed by another province?
Oh, absolutely. It's very sad indeed. Tony, just to come back to you, just your final thoughts as we reach the end of the show.
Well, I'd like to see in early January trials of about 120 people that are handpicked by all the coaches in Border, EP, and SWD. None of this cherry picking of the youngsters. Let people play. There's so much competent players, so many skilled players. You can put together, people can come in for free at the Mandela Bay Stadium, and you can put over 2-3 days, you can mix and match forwards and backs, wings, centers, locks, front rows, tight heads, loose heads, and you put everybody on trial and let the people see the kind of talent that the Eastern Cape has. That's what I'd like to see, and sponsors would rally to that kind of siren call.
I certainly believe so. Your final thoughts?
Well, I just appeal to SARU to please do something, because we're killing the talent in this country, and we're killing, the black talent from Eastern Cape, that's the bread basket of the talent here in South Africa in terms of non-white and blacks. So if they can take care of that province, I think everything else will just fall into place.
Your final thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, coming to Tyson, SARU really needs to step in. They really need to act, because everyone has been talking about it, but no one is putting their hands up to say, I'm going to do something. It's been a problem for a while. So I'd love SARU to be drastically on the money as SAP is, and then from probably after the holiday, because everyone is busy now,
Yeah.
and then from January, and what you just said for the trial run, that's a brilliant idea, because then it's fair to everyone. You get to see the players,
Yes.
which they never go watch. Selectors of EP never go watch in the rural areas. They never, even, they don't take the time to go watch the talent in the, if you don't play in PE,
Yeah.
it's very hard for you to be seen. If you're going to be playing against a PE squad, then you have to be seen in PE.
Yeah.
They don't travel to all the smaller unions, so how are you going to see your talent?
Well,
So that needs to be.
That's certainly another very, very big problem. Gentlemen, it's been such a pleasure to have you here. I really appreciate your time, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the season. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, as you would have heard, very important things here. I do believe that SARU is doing as much as they can with all of the precedents in the President's Council, certainly trying to iron things out. But more of an effort certainly needs to be made to fix up the things at the Eastern Province Rugby Union, at the Southern Kings. Think about the players in Border, in SWD, in the smaller unions that don't get the benefits of the Southern Kings and don't get the opportunities that the bigger unions have. Well, that's all from us here on Game On. We've certainly enjoyed the show. We certainly hope that this show has touched many of those that love rugby around the country, and we certainly hope that something will come out of this. Well, from me and the team, goodbye.